There are times in your life when you recognize that you have a calling. You know, uh, there's I can't remember if it was it Witches of Eastwick, or it was reminding me of this line, Witches of Eastwick or Batman. When Jack Nicholson once said, "I was standing in the shower one day when I realized I was destined for greatness." And there's a moment in your life sometimes where you just kind of go, "All right, you know what? I do have a purpose on this planet that is relatively unique and has value, and is in a niche that no one else has any interest in filling, apparently." Hello. And not the niche you're thinking of. Just saying. It's a different niche altogether.
Moon River.
So, I think it was Batman. I think you're right, Kath. And in simply, watching the wailing and gnashing of teeth that is going on, and that it has gone on, quite frankly, and knowing that I was kind of ahead of the curve on a bunch of things, yours truly has come to realize that I'm almost singularly holding down the optimism for it and dunking on the doomsayers every day. Every single day. Just dunking on them like donuts. Sure. And it keeps coming back around. And so there's occasionally when there's an occasion that happens infrequently where I will see a news story come across and I'll go, "Oh, this is interesting. Maybe this is a twist in things. Maybe this is something I did not see coming." And I do mean not see. Perhaps there's something to this argument, or perhaps I've been gainsaying it too often. And then I look at it and I'm like, no, right again. No, definitely not. So today we have way too much material, as per usual. And it is really hard to decide how to do the dumbest stuff first. And can I just start with something that, we try to spice it up around here. Don't go to the same folks every single time, right? Sometimes you want to you don't want to have the same players. Ever since Lynn Wood has been taking a giant shit on Dan Bongino and telling everybody that he's a CIA mole and used to work for Obama. Oh, Telegram is a funny place. Ever since you almost don't need to deal with him because the QAnons have already started attacking him like crazy. The turning on Michael Flynn thing is spectacular. But then some stuff just sends us back, old school. Like, here, how about an old player? Now, occasionally these kind of clips come up into my feed. Thank you, CSL. And sometimes it's the thumbnail that makes me laugh. And that's reason enough. And sometimes it is simply the first shot of the video where the where the frozen screen is so just tickles me pink. Where everybody in the video just has, I don't know what, some things just, they click for me. And I just like, and you just, it fills you with hope. The Diamond Silk interview with Mike Lindell. Oh, indeed, Chet Pants. Oh, indeed. Biden, U.S. in very strong shape ahead of the holidays. Horrifying for Fox Business News. Horrifying. And by the way, the worst part about this statement, this Chiron, is that it is true. Hal has to be CIA, right? Totally. I wish. I would totally work for the CIA. They won't have me, though. But isn't that someone that I guess is in the CIA would say, there's no way all right, I'm not the Messiah. Only the true Messiah would deny his divinity. All right, I am the Messiah. My Lord! Like, now, what can I, how do I, all right. So, this is, many of you may recall that Donald Trump did not invent the colorful name, nickname game in DC anyways. One of the people who probably, I think, made the most impact on, I think, of finding out that somebody called somebody a nickname in Washington history is the fact that we found out that George W. Bush called Karl Rove, his senior advisor, turd blossom. Turd blossom. He called him blossom. That's amazing. Like, when a lot of us found that out, we're like, yo, what now? Well, that was, I remember when a lot of people, like my parents' generation, it was where you were when you found out that Kennedy had been assassinated. In my circles, it's like, do you remember where you were when you first heard that George W. Bush calls his senior campaign advisor, and therefore his and chief of staff or whatever he moved into, turd blossom? I mean, honestly, no, and that's not a shit for brains thing. That's a turd blossom is a butthole. It's a dirty butthole, is what it is. And Karl Rove, that's what he was. It kind of goes to in Goldmember, in the Austin Powers Goldmember, when he's like, "Oh, I pinched one off too soon. I left a rosebud in there for you." That's what it. That's also a turd blossom. He's a skid mark, essentially. It's just gross. It's just like, but it was so far. It was so far over the line, so as to be just kind of like mind blowing, right? Remember that? Turd blossom is Texas slang. Oh, that's a slang that gets around. But the fact that he called, that the senior highest person in our government calls the most important advisor they have, besides, of course, the guy Dick Cheney, who was sock puppeting him at the time, calls him turd blossom. It's just, what the hell, right? So, but that never stopped Fox Business from bringing in Karl Rove. And this is, Karl Rove, what's Biden's supply chain plan? Who's in charge? What is right? There's nothing. Have you seen? Dear God. If you'll recall, I posted this earlier, by the way. The timing of this one was particularly fantastic because I had to go grocery shopping and Christmas shopping. And thank you for the super chats, by the way. You are, no pressure, my Merry Christmas. My child and I are relying on you, as is every loved one that I have. So don't forget to subscribe on Twitch. Give a thumbs up, all that kind of stuff. If you're a troll, please thumbs down. I need the CPMs, and super chats always help. It's just a good thing. So, but this was the shelves, literally like every shelf I went down, and I walked right into Best Buy, and this was what greeted me inside the door. Like, I had about 3 feet, and I couldn't get to go around this shit, and and at the same time, like, the news on my way to the store was talking about supply chains and how there's just nothing, just empty shelves. Oh dear God. And I live in multiple places. I just got back from Nashville, Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati, and Kansas, and in a weekend, one weekend. And I was in stores in all of those places at some point or another. And there was stock upon stock upon stock, like everywhere. Yeah, well, I am a CIA spy, right? I got news for you. The CIA does not send people to Northern Kentucky unless they're trying to get them to, wash out. You're the knock, James. The washout was faked. Anyways. So I tweeted this morning, and then this story comes up. Who's in charge? I don't even know what's going on. Nobody's doing anything. I'm sure there's a reasonable, it's a short clip, but I just need to know what this asshole is saying.
Joining me now to discuss it all, Karl Rove, former senior advisor to former President George W. Bush.
Who called him turd blossom. Please, how do you leave that? You can't leave that out of Karl Rove's biography. If you're going to read any of his CV and say, primarily, you'll know him as serving in the Bush White House, a.k.a. turd blossom.
also a Fox contributor. Karl, always great to see you.
Thank you, Jackie. Great to see you.
So one of the things today in that presser was President Biden talking about the media, essentially reporting that the shelves are empty. And then he said that the shelves weren't empty and that, you know, we were going to get everything that we needed for the holidays. But he used the example of Cabbage Patch Kids, if you can remember that, when they were just very difficult to get because of the demand out there for them. Two very different situations, very different storytelling here.
That's because there's lots of things on the shelves, dipshit. Now, you're on Fox Business, ma'am, so I wouldn't expect you to know this. But in the spectrum of things that are on shelves, there are must-have, difficult-to-get, backed-up items every year. As a matter of fact, it's been a marketing scheme since Cabbage Patch Kids that literally companies will hold back supply to create an artificial need. It's kind of like making people line up in front of an empty nightclub, right? And you go inside and there's like 5 people, but the line on the street has 60 people in it. You're like, what the fuck is happening? Well, a club with 60 people in it is lame. But a club that looks like it can't fit 60 more people is supposedly amazing. So, thank you, Vincent. I'm glad to be there for you. Much love. We're going to make it after all. I'm sorry. Sometimes, Vincent, I'm going to resort back to the theme songs of 80s sitcoms. There's those things. Right now, that would be PS5s and Xboxes. Mainly Xboxes. There's been PS5s. Like Walmart is releasing, PS5s with increasing regularity. My mom got one through a friend for my sister. It's like, because they got 2 of them. They were, signed up on 2 different places because they were rare. And then they ended up, both of them came in at the same time. But the Xboxes are way behind that. And that's more to do with Microsoft and other shit than it has to do with overall supply chain issues in that regard. That said, there's also turkeys and food and regular toys and clothing and stuff that comes from all over the goddamn place. And the materials that make those things that sort of shorten the supply chain or break the supply chain in other places. So there's a variance. So in Biden's speech, he's talking about that variance, that there's going to be plenty of stuff on the shelves. Some things are going to be hard to get. And that's always true. Now, I'm sure she'll point this out.
And the president is not speaking the truth. Your thoughts?
Well, he was not being accurate when he said, look, we are responsible, he said, at the White House for solving this problem by getting the ports and the longshoremen unions to agree to work 24 hours. The ports were trying to get to that agreement with the unions for months, and the administration played no significant role in bringing that about. Look, what have they done?
Here's what you're actually seeing here. Forget what he actually just said. But what you're seeing here is a guy that's been brought on to present a talking point that's already over. Understand? Like, that talking point is already dead. And it's a rough spot, Turd Blossom.
They issued a report in June from the White House calling the supply chain problems, quote, transitory.
Yes, they are. There are 2 major aspects. 1, COVID. 2, people's exodus from China. Businesses leaving China, moving their factories elsewhere. In that move, there will be delays of products made and new materials shifted. And COVID has shut down factories and shut down shipping and shut down airplanes and shut down driving and shut down people's lives for so long that there's a backup of stuff at factories, where they literally shut down on the day and everybody walked out the fucking door, and that stuff has to be picked up from scratch and they have to catch up. There's basically 8 dead months of total lack of production in almost every aspect of the supply chain. That is exactly how you would define transitory. Anybody who thinks that we're going to have COVID-level lockdowns in factories worldwide forever, because that's what he's arguing, forever is fucking insane.
they apply to inflation. They talked in that report about coffee and cars and toilet paper and showed examples of how those industries were dealing with the supply chain issues, and then said, you know, we can take dramatic measures like we did to help Japan after the 2011 earthquakes and after we did in one other situation involving a foreign country. But what have they done here at the United States?
Well,
that's what she's having you on to talk about. One of the things they did is something you just denied they did, which is get the longshoremen to work longer hours. The other thing was to organize the shipping lanes back and forth from supply areas more efficiently. On top of that, the other thing is to give more funding to schools that train truckers is one of the things that's happening. Have you seen all those ads lately? Or if you watch the local news, more than likely, if you watch it regularly, you've seen at least a story. If you have a trucking school or a trucking line in your neighborhood or in your city or in the county, they have been doing like, we're hiring right now and you can learn to drive in 8 weeks. All that shit's happening. Same thing's happening in England, by the way. And the fact that this fucko is also not saying this is a worldwide problem, and she's not saying it's a worldwide problem, and that the United States is handling it way better right now than anyone, is also lies by omission.
it's a good question. It's one that I've asked often, over and over again.
Hey, why don't you just fucking Google it? All right, let's see. Yeah, ask over and over. Who are you asking? Tucker? Maria Bartiromo? Business leaders? Here's a good idea. You're in New York. Take a cab down to Wall Street and ask someone. Administration remedies supply chain issues. Now this is, we gotta, probably forgive this lady. I'm gonna pull up a story right now. This is from logisticsmanagement.com. I'm just grabbing this kind of, and I'll pick this up. There we go. This guy right here. White House continues to take an active role in shaping supply chain recovery efforts. The White House is continuing to take steps to get involved in helping to remedy the myriad of domestic supply chain issues over the last several months. Sorry, the myriad domestic. I thought it was just that Democrats were in office. I thought that was the only issue. Right? Right? That's got to be the only issue. The White House is continuing to take steps to get involved in helping remedy the myriad of domestic challenges. In October, President Joe Biden held a summit on global supply chain resilience with the European Union and 14 other nations to foster greater international cooperations on near-term supply chain disruptions and chart a course to strengthen and diversify the entire supply chain ecosystem over the long term. By the way, that little phrase right there, let me see, blow this up. Diversify the entire supply chain ecosystem over the long term. You know what that means? Get out of China. That's exactly there. This is them saying it without saying it. But what's he doing? From raw materials, intermediate and finished goods manufacturing to shipping, logistics, warehousing, and distribution. This comes on the heels of a previous announcement made by the White House focusing on expanding United States West Coast port operating hours, as well as rolling out an early warning system for potential disruptions in semiconductor manufacturing, including Asia, and also leveraging aspects of the executive order issued in February, focused on building resilient supply chains. Themes were addressed at the summit that include how to tackle the supply chain. Okay. President Biden also laid out a few different paths for the U.S. to take with a focus on supply chain resilience, including issuing an executive order to streamline U.S. stockpiling efforts by delegating authority to the Department of Defense to make material releases from the National Defense Stockpile and allow a speedier response to material shortfalls within the defense industrial base. This is beyond even the consumer supply chains, because there's all kinds of federal industries that need, internal industries that need stuff as well. Increase funding to promote international supply chain resilience among U.S. partners and allies by having the State Department allot funding to provide technical assistance to Mexico and Central America to alleviate supply chain disruptions and bottlenecks, and also announcing millions of funding for new U.S. ASEAN initiatives, including funding to augment customs and clearance procedures, reducing delays, encouraging sustainable and efficient supply chains. plans to hold a multi-stakeholder summit in 2022, hosted by the Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and Secretary of State Gina Raimondo, focused on establishing new steps among supply chain stakeholders in other countries to build greater global supply chain resilience so that this problem caused by COVID doesn't happen again. Now, I don't know how anybody at Fox News would ever be able to, obviously Trump is wasting his time hanging out with soldiers of color, and this is probably the biggest problem they have at Fox News. But those kind of stories that I read from that logisticsmanagement.com website or wherever else, there's let's see, news. This is just let's see. Most of this is going to be on the story at the top. Supply chain solutions in Port of New York. CCPS. I'm getting all these, like, my feed gets filled with the companies that do this, that are trying to sell me ways to deal with my supply chain issues. Good old Google. Yeah, one of the, by the way, and this is, sourced by whatever. One of the reasons why we've got a shortage, a supply chain issue with cotton goods, if you don't know, is because Xinjiang in China is where a lot of the cotton comes from, and they're using forced labor. Forced labor is a wonderful euphemism for slavery. These are not people who are in prison, who can get a job while they're in prison, printing license plates and stamping them out in a machine to shorten their time by showing they're a productive person so they can go in front of the parole board and go, I've been working a job in here. I got a degree in this. I got my GED. I worked as a firefighter for 2 years as a prisoner while I was in here, and I want that applied towards my good behavior so that I can maybe bring my 12-year sentence down to 6 or shit like that, which is exactly what American prisoners do. None of the lifers or death row people work because they're not getting out, so they don't give a fuck. Working for, it's slave labor in American prisons. No, it isn't. You can show that you're a good member of society and you're willing to learn from your mistakes by working in these things, and you get a stipend that you use in the canteen while they pay for your housing, pay for your medical care, pay for your food every fucking day, and then you also get extra money on top of that, and you can shorten your time. That's work while you're in prison. That's not what this is. This is rounding up hundreds of thousands of people and forcing them, through threat towards their family members largely, to work in cotton fields for nothing. It's slavery. Right now on Earth. And that's where, a vast majority of Chinese cotton goes through, and the world knows it. So we just slapped a bunch of sanctions on a bunch of Chinese oligarchs, because that's what they are. The people in the CCP aren't communists. They're right like Putin. They just use they use a different phrase for what their job allegedly is. But they are laundering this cotton by creating a longer supply chain. You send it one place, and it sits there, and then somebody else buys it in another company, and then another company buys it. They're all the same company with different names, and then they sell it after it's been sold 3 times. That's one of the reasons why clothing supply chains have a hitch in their get along, even beyond COVID. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hal, these people don't give a fuck about Chinese slaves, about Uyghur slaves. Uyghur slaves. They don't care about that. These two? No. They're looking at some sort of artificial bottom line.
It's interesting because he also talked about this progress that the administration was making, and Edward alluded to it. He was saying that, the dates that ships were sitting at the ports was dropping, and that might be true, but at the same time,
might. It ain't might. It is true. It is obviously and materially and logically and verifiably true. It's not might. It is true. And the fact that she uses that might be true is one of the laziest ways of showing that you are absolutely biased against the news you have to report. The truth is irritating this woman.
And the goods aren't getting to the shelves when people.
Yeah, they are.
Them, and people are hoarding items, for example, that they think they might not be.
How can you hoard items that aren't on the shelves? Who? Bring on I'm sorry. Is he a hoarder? Do we? And by the way, if you're going to show us backed up ships and all that kind of stuff, don't show two ships docked in a bunch of containers, because that's always what these fucking docks look like.
To get later, which only kind of exacerbates this problem.
Yeah, it's if the American people weren't such assholes, if they weren't listening to her and hoarding shit they don't need to hoard, we wouldn't have this problem. Do you understand what's happening here? Like, we haven't even gotten back to Karl Rove's reason. Why is she asking this asshole about this subject? I mean, obviously he's got some skills. He's been in politics for a long time. If you want to get into a war for oil or attack a country that didn't attack us, this is your dude. He can tell you 10 different ways to Sunday how to make that happen. What the fuck does Karl Rove know about supply chains?
And he's taking no responsibility for it. In fact, he's standing there and saying, I'm doing such a great job here.
No, he's saying there are challenges and we're handling it. And it's going surprisingly well considering. And we're going to keep at it. He's not doing these victory laps like Trump. Stop. Notice how this woman's ears receive the words that Biden has been saying. By the way, they didn't play the clip for a very good reason. They showed pictures of him talking. She paraphrases what he's saying, but they don't play what he's saying for a very specific reason.
Yeah. Well, first of all, what's the plan? We don't know what the plan is because they've never.
What the fuck is this? What's the plan? Who's in charge? NEC, Brian Deese. Department of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg. Treasury, Janet Yellen. Commerce, Raimondo. Someone's bunking me. What the fuck is this? Honest, yeah. Whose notes are that fucking big? Did he just tear that? That was like her notes next to the camera, and he tore it. Yeah, it's the 6 Commandments. Just tore it off the wall. What does this say again? I wore the wrong glasses today. He's trying to be the new Katie Porter. What's the plan? Who's in charge? Those people are in charge. What are you talking about? They're all involved in all these talks. They're all involved in each of these supply chain. Like, Buttigieg is, oh, fucking hell. Why do I have to always look up every goddamn thing? This is, let's see. This is the, so he's not, what's the plan? Who's in charge? Well, apparently, in terms of your list, we already looked at this one a while back. Pete Buttigieg hosts a roundtable on port stuff. That was in July. And by the way, since then, they've come up with solutions and brought the number of backed up ships down. Or they might have. I don't know. Whatever. Buttigieg says U.S. supply chains will certainly continue. They've got, I mean, it's an ongoing problem. This is October 17th when he talked to him. AMP issues supply chain letter to DOT Secretary. Okay, let's see. AMP issues supply chain letter to DOT Secretary Buttigieg on reliable and resilient American maritime. Today, the American Maritime Partnership publicly released a letter to U.S. Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg underscoring the continued reliability of America's domestic maritime services despite the current supply chain crises. crisis. America's maritime is providing certainty to American customers and consumers undeterred by supply chain disruptions and congestion impacting global shipping and major international U.S. ports. You see this part of the global shipping, particularly on the West Coast. While the supply chain issues pertaining to our import-export trades persist, the men and women of America's domestic maritime industry will continue to do our part to deliver for Americans, President of the American Maritime Partnership says. The current supply chain problems highlight once again the importance of maintaining a highly resilient and dedicated American supply chain for serving customers in our domestic markets. Good old Made in America. Remember when Trump was like, Made in America, we're gonna make those words mean something again, and then he wrote a loophole specifically for people to get out of what it meant to be. Well, made in the Americas. I guess if you make it in Chile, if you make it in Guatemala, it's technically made in the Americas. Maybe we put the and the S really small.
Out a plan. Who's in charge of this issue? Who is the supply chain czar? They have a
asshole. It's transitory. We have people in charge of this. They're having overall meetings. There's no reason. It's a waste of fucking time. And by the way, in case you're wondering what he's actually arguing for, he's arguing for another level of bureaucracy. Yeah, small government conservatives, ladies and gentlemen. I give you Turd Blossom from the administration that was trying to drown our government in a bathtub. Small government conservatives who don't understand why we don't have a point czar on stuff when the president and his staff and these different agencies can handle their fucking part.
Supply Disruption Task Force. I dare you to name me a member of it or point to an instance other than their written July or June report of them saying anything about this issue. Is the National Economic Council in charge of this issue? Are they the ones calling together meetings of every?
No, they're on that board.
Is it the Department of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, who
No, he deals with ports and all the internal domestic transportation issues in the supply chain. Why would you put the Department of Transportation head in charge of international trade and supply chain issues dealing with the EU?
Appeared for 4 or 6 weeks on maternity leave and didn't bother to tell the country or designate an operating officer in his place at DOT.
Yeah, there was nobody. I don't know if anybody knew that, but there was no one running the Department of Transportation. It completely shut down. If you went anywhere, if you tried to transportation anything, it would just disappear. There was nobody there. Knock on the door. It was a sign. Back in 4 months and a picture of him holding a baby. It was pathetic. I don't know how they even justify this whole thing.
Is it the Treasury Secretary?
Mm-hmm.
She's
No, the Treasury Secretary should not be in charge of dealing with material supply chains caused largely by the bottleneck of us getting most of our goods from China pre-COVID. What the fuck?
Around this issue. Is it the Commerce Secretary? No, there's nobody in charge of this except the President and Ron Klain.
Excuse me, dipshit? Sorry, Turd Blossom. What was that again?
Is it the Commerce Secretary? No, there's nobody in charge of this except the President and Ron Klain. And
yes, the President is in charge of this. You know, the guy who just spoke about it and talked about the successes that they've made. Maybe it's something he does when Sean Hannity thinks he's doing nappy time.
Not doing anything. That's why they cannot lay out a plan.
He could put.
They did lay out a plan. The fuck are you talking about? You just talked about the plan they laid out in June. The plan is working. The plan is working. There are real challenges that have fuck all to do with us and our current situation that are not going to change. It's called reality. Within the scope of reality, there are things you can do to make something better, and there are things you just simply cannot do to change the reality. They established a plan to work on all the things they can change to help the current reality, and they established a plan to move us away from this circumstance again so we never find ourselves in this sole reality ever again. That's a fucking plan. Solve now what's broken now and solve for the future so that we're never broken like this again. That's exactly what you're asking for. That's exactly what the American people need. It's exactly what you would do if you're in charge. And it's exactly what you assholes just laid out accidentally.
Kamala Harris in charge of it the way he did with the border, and we know that she wouldn't be anywhere to be found either.
Zing! Fucking lazy.
Having said that, inflation, Karl, we've been talking about it. You and I have been saying it is not transitory when these prices move up like this. It takes a very long time for them to come down. If they
ever do. Does it? Sorry, it takes a very long time for them to come down? You mean be transitory? Maybe it's your definition of transitory, ma'am, that's the issue. What do you think? A long weekend? Is that what that you solve a problem like COVID supply chain issues and the inflation caused by that lack of growth? You solve that in a long week. What is it? 6 weeks? 9 weeks maybe? I mean, we have a complete shutdown of the entire global economy like this every couple weeks, don't we? And we just get over it. You know what I mean? It's like this argument about the debt ceiling. We have it all the fucking time. This isn't like a once in a lifetime circumstance we find ourselves in.
And in fact, Jerome Powell acknowledged the fact 9 months later, since this problem started, that inflation is not transitory. Listen.
How long does inflation have to run above your target before the Fed decides maybe it's not so transitory?
I think it's probably a good time to retire that word and try to explain more clearly what we mean.
Okay, so it's...
Oh, okay. So transitory makes it sound is too short sounding a word. It's like a phase. Call it a phase we're going through because of COVID. And transitory just sounds too short term. But I'm sure they cut off what he was about to say right at that moment because that's all we needed to hear. You know what I mean? It got the point across.
To retire that word, the market certainly didn't like that. President Biden talking about it today, and he was asked about, he was compared to the Nixon and Carter administrations when they faced some inflation problems as well. He said this is very different because we're in the middle of a pandemic and the labor force is working with the corporations. And you could say that's one way, Karl, right?
Yes, you could say that because it might be true. It might, Karl, this might be true. It is fucking true. Hey, anybody remember the great worldwide pandemic of 1976? Remember that? When all the planes were grounded and all the ships were sitting and all the factories weren't producing anything and everybody was at home. Remember all the masks we wore while we were discoing? I remember getting my first vaccine shot for COVID 76, which was the bicentennial of our nation's greatest infectious disease. I remember getting that one, and having a sore arm while I listened to Led Zeppelin 4. Fucking hell.
Corollary to that would be...
No, guys, somebody's like, I don't remember that. It didn't happen. That's my point. It did not occur. The inflation issues we had in the 70s were other market forces and other issues worldwide. And the economy of the United States right now versus the economy of 1977 bears as much resemblance to each other as steam engines to warp drive.
Labor force is demanding higher wages. The corporations are paying them at their expense, and that's only going to exacerbate the problem.
I'm sorry, what? The corporations are paying what, their employees at their expense? The fuck?
Their wages. The corporations are paying them at their expense, and that's only going to exacerbate the problem.
Yeah, that's the problem with, you give people more money, they got more money to spend, and then it's just going to chase inflation. Now, never mind the fact that we're using economic models and systems based on a national idea of what an economy and inflation is like instead of the international market for what stuff is, and that largely supply chains, when stuff is coming from foreign countries, defines the availability of products. And the United States, by easing tariffs, for example, on European goods and the like, could ease the cost overall and lower prices so that internally people don't jack up prices just to compete, or people don't use subsidiary distributors in the United States to raise the price on stuff while they sell it cheaper in Canada and shit like that. I mean, we could do that if we have, sensible people in the White House, which is what they're doing. Or we could just go by these assholes line, make lame Kamala Harris border jokes where the border is no longer a problem and is numerically right in line with 1997 numbers, a regular spike, but nothing compared. Same number, again, same number of physical people, but more people in the world. Population's gone up, the number of people crossing same as in like 97 or 95. So, never mind. That's not important. Let's follow. They were saying something about, AIDS ribbon, obviously. So, by the way, notice the picture book of horrors that Fox Business has decided to put up of the White House. And like the world's falling apart. We got supply chain issues. We're having to pay employees more money. The world is falling apart, and what's Biden doing? Taking pictures with black soldiers and women, and they got an AIDS ribbon on the fucking White House. What's this world coming to?
Absolutely. Look, we knew it was not going to be transitory when we saw the pattern of increases. Take, for example,
Sorry, the pattern of increases. This is going to be good.
When President Biden came into office, we were actually seeing deflation. January of 2021 over January of 2020 was about a 3.5% decline in gasoline.
One more time.
Seeing deflation. January of 2021 over January of 2020 was about a 3.5% decline in gasoline prices. It's up 36% since the beginning of the year. You look at food, you look at energy, you look at housing.
By the way, what's driving inflation? What could it be? Doobity-doo. What's really driving inflation? Where's the chart? Here it is. This is a Census Bureau. Why is there so many ads on this? Why is inflation rising? Where's the 3 main causes of inflation? Let's see. What the 4 causes? Okay. Everybody's giving me definitions. Now, here we go. Look at this. Oh, my God. U.S. inflation hit a 31-year high in October as consumer prices jumped 6.2%. Core index was up 4.6% as pandemic-related supply shortages. And what's this one right here? Oh, dear God. Dear God. The horror. Dun, dun, dun. Strong consumer demand continues. Pandemic-related supply shortages. Strong consumer demand. Yes, nothing says a collapsing economy like strong consumer. And this is year over year, so it's bullshit. We've done this a bunch of fucking times on this. U.S. inflation hit a 3-decade high in October, delivering widespread and sizable price increases in households for everything from groceries to cars due to persistent supply shortages. The consumer price, which measures the consumer goods, increased in October 6.2 from a year ago when everything took a shit. Let's see. But let's look at fuel prices graph. 2018. Yeah, whoops. Okay, I could type 2018 to 21. Somebody will have there'll be a picture in here. Images. Boink. Put this picture in here. Gasoline and diesel pricing happening again. Here we go. Oops, I'm not paying for this. Get out of here. Okay. Usage and prices. Oh, this, god damn it. We had another chart that was also, let's see, World War chronology from 2021. There you go. Okay. Let's see. 2021. Here's the almost $3.04. This was in May to December. This was back earlier. So the idea is, there you go. This is 296, 304. Maybe they have a newer one. Colonial Pipeline shutdown. Okay, this is the older one. And by the way, remember this? Remember when the pipeline was hacked? Let's see. There's got to be an updated one on this. Anyways, here's, let's see, 2020. There you might see what, this is a percentage, or dollar against this. So this is the money that oil companies lost last year. Look at that. That is the loss they are making up for this. Now, I don't suppose people are going to give us credit for the driving we didn't do last year. But can you see a corollary? Can you see, look at normal years. Here's 2019, here's 2020, 2018. Whoop, there we go. 2018 dropped near the end of the year in December. And then 2019 just chugged right along. This is worldwide supply fluctuation, and it's in this window right here. But see this is last year. So anybody tells you that they want to give you this percentage rise between these two things, ask them for the percentage rise in April from 2019 to last year, or even 2019 to this year, and the rise in it to compensate for all the losses down here. That's what's happening. I mean, it's just, and again, this goes to the whole, like, we can't have a pipeline. We're not allowed to have a pipeline. That's our oil. It's not our oil. We don't nationalize our oil. We're not Venezuela. And the fact that these fuckos want us to be is so bizarre.
All of these things have been rising year over year, and they're pretty dramatic increases, as you indicated earlier.
Yeah.
And so
year over year. And there you have it. Trump wants credit for all the price drops in 2020 because that were caused directly by disease. And I guess his shitty attention to the disease early in the pandemic could, you could largely say that if we had made special zones around our meatpacking plants and around shipping and took extra care for our trucking and all that kind of stuff, we wouldn't have had that kind of price drop. So sure, things would have just hummed right along. Let's see, 2020 price drop. Let's see. Yeah, here you go. Most commodity prices to drop in 2020. This is April of last year, amid pandemic, according to the World Bank. There you go. Remember this when they say year over year. Most commodity prices are expected to drop in 2020 amid the global economic shock of the COVID-19 pandemic. Oh, economic shock? You mean normal, the new normal? Almost all commodity prices saw sharp declines during the past. The what saw sharp decline? Prices saw a sharp decline during the past 3 months as the COVID-19 pandemic worsened. That continued, by the way. This article is from April of 2020. Mitigation measures have significantly reduced transport, causing an unprecedented decline in demand for oil, while weaker economic growth will further reduce overall commodity demand. So, I think Fox Business needs to file this under shut the fuck up. madness.
Administration saying transitory, it's no longer credible. And then again, what's the plan? What are they going to do to wring it out of the system?
Yeah, and I will just remind.
Wring it out of the system. Is that how you solve things back in the Bush administration? You wring it out of the system? I don't really think about Osama bin Laden anymore. We kind of wrang him out of the system. Mission accomplished.
Americans that oil prices are down roughly 20% from their October high, and that is very substantial, but you're not seeing that at the pump, and it has nothing to do with his SPR release because it's so minimal in this equation.
Hey, fucko, what do you mean his? That's the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. His. Now, this is another trick. This, fucking hell. This would be what they're talking about. President Biden announces release from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve as a part of an ongoing effort to lower prices and address lack of supply around the world. All around the world, same song. All around the world, I came to the party to get naughty, get my rocks on, eat popcorn. All right, sorry. Sometimes I have flashbacks to the Dan Aykroyd, Chevy Chase, Demi Moore movie, Nothing But Trouble. It happens. Digital Underground is in it. So is Tupac, one of the lost Tupac performances. All right. Let's see. In large part due to the American Rescue Plan, we got this. Even so, American consumers are feeling the impact of elevated gas prices. Today, the president announcing the Department of Energy will make available releases of 50 million barrels of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to lower prices for Americans and address the mismatch between demand exiting the pandemic and supply. The president has been working with countries across the world to address the lack of supply as the world exits the pandemic. And as a result of Biden's leadership and our diplomatic efforts, this release... What's this? What's this part? He's just dropping the bucket? Yeah, if he did it by himself. If he was a go-it-alone president like Trump, and the people at Fox News can't fucking factor in a single thought. Where that's how, how could you possibly run a White House differently than some sort of like broken loner who's always out for himself? This release will be taken in parallel with other major energy-consuming nations, including China, India, Japan, Republic of Korea, and the United Kingdom. The EU countries are also doing it. Germany and France were doing it too. They added on. This culminates weeks of consultation with countries around the world. Sounds like there's some planning going on. And we're already seeing the effects of this work on oil prices. Over the last several weeks, though, as the reports of this work have become public, oil prices are down 10%. 32 million barrels will be exchanged over the next several months. 18 million barrels will be an acceleration in the next several months on the sale of oil that Congress has previously authorized. We will replenish what is in there off of the amount that oil companies that use our lands to pump oil give us in lieu of direct cash payment, whichever is more profitable for the United States. By the way, could she know this? I mean, like I said, she works at Fox Business. Probably not. What is there any reason why he wouldn't know this? Of course not. He's been in the White House. Bullshit.
Pointed out, this really has to do with the fact that the markets are worried again about demand problems with respect to the administration and its policies and Omicron.
Absolutely. There's a big reason why the markets are down, and that is because the president said, don't worry too much about this, and it caused us thereby to worry. The administration, again, is making the problem worse, not making the problem less problematic for the American people.
Well said. Did he go to Wharton as well? Is there a class on how to say nothing while using the same word over and over?
Karl Rove, thank you so much. Good to see you.
Thank you for fucking nothing. Oh, good God. how when we use our reserves that way, do we actually sell it to the oil companies? Sort of. It goes in multiple ways. So I was kind of getting to that, but I'll in the oil exchange, they can buy those at a lower price. So the processing of it is cheaper. Sometimes they won't pass along. A lot of times they're not passing along the savings to people because they're making up for the losses last year. 32 million barrels will be in exchange over the next several months, releasing oil that will eventually return to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve in the years ahead. The exchange is a tool to match to today's specific economic environment, where markets expect future oil prices to be lower than they are today, and helps provide relief to Americans immediately and bridge to that period of expected lower oil prices. The exchange also automatically provides for restocking of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve over time to meet future needs. 18 million barrels will be an acceleration into the next several months of a sale of oil that Congress had previously authorized. So they do this anyways. They top off what's in there as well. So it'll enter the U.S. market for purchase solely, the American exchange, instead of the open markets, as it were. And so all these other countries will do it as well. Therefore, it'll drive down the prices of oil, specifically the major exporters, Russia and the Middle East, which is pissing them off, which is why you've got this asshole and this lady bitching about this same thing.